What's up? Welcome to the most boring talk we will ever do in general surgery. Today we're talking about liver disease. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize ahead of time. This lecture is probably going to put you to sleep. So outside of Andy Griffith, Mayberry, this is pretty bad. This is what I would watch if I needed to go to sleep. Although Barney Fife is pretty good. Anyway, liver disease. It's part of general surgery because we are the beginning of surgery for the most part. Liver falls into our wheelhouse. Gallbladder, cirrhosis used to. We do a lot of operations. We don't do operations for that now. So you really need to have an understanding of liver disease pretty much for one reason and one reason only. The gallbladder. We take out the gallbladder all the time, so patients come in with elevated bilirubins. You have to decide whether this is alcoholic steatosis, non-alcoholic cirrhosis, alcoholic cirrhosis, hepatitis A, B, C active, versus just a bad gallbladder, versus common bile duct stone, versus common bile duct tumor, versus pancreatic cancer. We're going to go review this a little bit. We're going to go quickly because really all the information that you need is on the board. But again, this is all necessary to determine whether or not someone's gallbladder needs to come out or not. If they're having an episode of hepatitis A, B, C, active hepatitis, you don't want to take their gallbladder out. You want to wait till your liver enzymes cool down. Gallbladder, it needs to come out, they'll get better. Making a differentiation, need the information. Alcoholic fatty liver disease. Just what it says. You drink alcohol, you're overweight, you smoke, party person, there's a chance you're going to end up with fatty liver disease associated with alcohol. That eventually can turn into cirrhosis, which is what we're trying to avoid. Most of these patients come in looking like they have cirrhosis, but not quite. They already have some of the physical findings associated with it because of significant alcohol intake over a long period of time. You can also have this happen acutely or chronically. Diagnosis, again, liver enzymes, AST, ALT elevated. Eventually you get a biopsy, it'll say acute fatty liver disease associated with cirrhotic changes consistent with alcoholic liver disease. Treatment, stop drinking, lose weight, stop smoking. That's simple. Now, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is now has all these nice names. NAFL, that's one abbreviation, basically. Hepatic steatosis, that's what we see on biopsy after gallbladder or liver biopsy. NASH, steatosis, plus inflammation, usually chronic, and fibrosis. So you essentially go from this to cirrhosis. This now is the more likely cause of cirrhosis in the United States than alcoholic liver disease. As crazy as it sounds, but if you think about it, 1/3 of our population is obese. So obesity is the biggest risk factor. Once you add in eating too many fat burgers, hyperlipidemia, too much sugar, diabetes, insulin resistance, set up for steatosis. Set up for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, set up for cirrhosis. Clinical presentation, usually it's asymptomatic. These patients, even though they have cirrhosis or approaching cirrhosis, they don't have the same medical issues as these alcoholic liver disease patients. So we'll take somebody's gallbladder out because they both have right upper quadrant pain, get in there and their liver's huge. They have all this nodular cirrhosis, usually micronodular cirrhosis that you can physically see, but they don't have the same portal hypertension physical findings that we see with alcoholism. They don't have the same metabolic problems with metabolizing anesthesia and medicines as they do in alcoholic liver disease. So I'm not saying this is not necessary to talk about, because it's common, but for whatever reason, they often have very little symptoms and the course itself is longer drawn out. But again, most people don't know it. There's no reason to find out. Diagnosis, increased AST and ALT, ferritin's sometimes elevated, alk phos is sometimes elevated, end up with a liver biopsy. Again, This kind of affects the whole system. This is pretty much focused straight to the liver. Treatment: lose weight, bariatric surgery, most successful way to lose weight in the United States, pretty much anywhere outside of lifestyle modification, but most people won't modify their lifestyles, so bariatric surgery wins. Drug therapy sometimes, statins, getting rid of those lipids. Make sure your diabetes is under control and monitoring the fibrosis. This is not like alcohol where you have to keep checking close on it. This is something that you check every once in a while. It does need to be monitored, but it's not closely followed like alcoholic liver disease. Now, what you're trying to avoid: cirrhosis, irreversible chronic liver damage leading to scarring of the portal triad, which results in liver failure. These are the patients that have portal hypertension. They have a 25% morbidity mortality if they're early cirrhotic from an elective surgery. These are the patients that have capital medusas. They have all of those findings that you see and talk about in medical school. That's because the portal vein can't flow through like it's supposed to. So you have backup your portal vein, and your portal systemic systems get enlarged, varices, all that good stuff. Cirrhosis. Want to avoid it. Quick sum up, that's pretty much all you need to know. But again, this is always a multiple choice question. Patient comes in with elevated liver enzymes and right upper quadrant abdominal pain. Do they drink? Are they overweight? Or is this a gallbladder? Hopefully it's answer C. The other thing we're going to talk about are the viruses. The main reason we want to talk about the viruses is because, again, patients will come in with hepatitis A, B, or C and have a similar presentation, because anytime you get hepatitis or liver inflammation, that's what hepatitis means, that capsule does swell and the patients get right upper quadrant abdominal pain, but they also have a gallbladder. Hepatitis A, fecal oral, 1988, oyster outbreak, Panama City, Florida. That's where that comes from. Learned that today. That was new for me. Fecal oral contamination, contaminated food, water, poop in the water, bad, runoffs of processing plants into the water table causes problems. Patients usually present with fevers, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, jaundice, pruritus, hepatomegaly. I guess I'm tripping over that today. Didn't eat enough gummy bears. These patients come in looking sick. So these patients will come in looking like they're about to die. They have all this stuff and they're complaining of right upper quadrant abdominal pain. They will have elevated bilirubins. They will have liver enzymes, and everybody will swear that it is a bad gallbladder. IgM, anti-HAV antibodies, you gotta check that if they're super sick. Treatment, leave it alone, it'll get better. Prevention with vaccines. Again, this is probably the most common that you'll see that gets confused with gallbladder. Hepatitis B, mom and baby, sexual contact, wrap it up, stop sharing needles. Symptoms: anorexia, nausea, vomiting, jaundice, right upper quadrant abdominal pain, discomfort. This is more of a chronic thing. They come in sick, but not as sick as hepatitis A. Diagnosis: hepatitis B surface antigen, greater than 6 months, chronic. Treatment, again, supportive care. Chronic, you have to start thinking about antiviral therapy based on ALT, HBV DNA, and the presence of cirrhosis. Prevention with vaccine. Hepatitis B. This is what we get in healthcare. It's one of the things they always ask about because, again, it's not IV drug use, it's exposure, bloodborne exposure. So, and we're exposed sometimes, part of the job, IV drug use. Now, hepatitis C. Again, same thing, blood transmission. So IV drug abuse, blood transfusions, sexual contact. Kind of same thing. Symptoms: jaundice, nausea, vomiting, dark urine, right upper quadrant abdominal pain. Still kind of same thing. Elevated AST and ALT, but these for testing, you can do PCR for HCV RNA. Now, again, treatment supportive or antivirals. There is no vaccine for hepatitis C, but it is getting treated right now, and the treatments are pretty good. I've seen a lot of patients that came in with hepatitis C that were really sick. They got treated, and actually are doing pretty well. Again, all of this you worry about getting to this point with cirrhosis. Once you get to cirrhosis, that's another lecture talking about transplants, but we're not going to do that. We'll let the transplant doctors do that. That's it. This is one of those things that when that patient comes into the emergency room, or if you are a patient and you go into the emergency room, we have to decide, is this steatosis, alcoholic liver disease, hepatitis ABC active, or is this a bad gallbladder? That's pretty much what we need to figure out before we decide to take you to the operating room. If you take a patient to the operating room with one of these inflammatory diseases of the liver, you'll run into a problem. Now, one other small thing that we'll talk about at the very end, it doesn't fall into the gallbladder theme, but you at least got to know a little bit about it. Hepatocellular carcinoma. Reason you want to know about this at the very end of this lecture is because one of the risk factors is cirrhosis of the liver. It doesn't matter which one of these you get it from. If you get cirrhosis, this can be a problem. Smoking, alcohol, diabetes, obesity, hepatitis B. All of these things that we've talked about put you at risk for hepatocellular carcinoma. These patients, again, upper abdominal pain, like all of this other stuff, because you have swelling of the liver capsule. Early satiety, you don't feel like eating all the way because that liver may be growing and pushing down on the stomach, so your stomach doesn't have the ability to expand like it normally does. And they have a palpable mass because the liver is getting big, maybe some portal hypertension, or you can actually feel the mass. Now, the thing to diagnose this is AFP, CT, MRI, ultrasound of the abdomen. Now, the interesting part is when you are deciding between hepatitis A, B, C, all of this, ultrasound of the abdomen is part of it because it looks at the portal structures. It also allows us to look at the gallbladder, and it also allows us to look at the liver if there's a liver mass. If you see a mass in the liver, they have a history of cirrhosis or any of this, they are a candidate for resection. Partial hepatectomy, adjuvant therapy. So if it's a mass in this lobe, you can cut this out. We can do a left lateral laparoscopically. We can sometimes do some of these other liver resections laparoscopically. We traditionally do not biopsy liver masses. We sometimes take them out before we do a biopsy because the biopsies can be risky, especially if it's a left lateral segment, if it's a posterior one and very complicated or big mass, or we see something that makes us believe they're unresectable or metastatic, then that's when we start thinking about biopsies. If they are non-resectable and you have a hepatocellular carcinoma and you do not have any evidence of metastatic disease, you technically are a candidate for a liver transplant. If you have multiple lesions and you have something that looks like it may be metastatic and we need to watch it, we can do radiofrequency ablation. We've done that for a while. You have to be careful because if it's close to a vein, a big vein, portal vein, this doesn't work as well. So it's not just, oh, there's a mass, RFA. You kind of have to figure out where you want to do it and why you want to do it and if you can do it. So it's a little bit of planning for this. And worst case scenario, systemic therapy, chemotherapy doesn't work. Liver. That's all I got. Call me. Take care.